So we're coming to the end of yet another sunny weekend, and we have had yet another incredible week on the Mike Graham Show. We've reached through 11 million. We've got nearly 12 million views now, thanks to all of you. We've got 144,000 subscribers, which is going really, really well. So do please like and subscribe. Today, we're putting out a sermon of the day, which is from our friend, the great friend of ours, the Bishop, who spoke to us during the week and sent a letter to the King to complain about the state of Christianity, being as it was in the middle of Ramadan, and that seemed to be all that anybody was talking about. We had a lot of goes at Sadiq Khan for that ridiculous showdown that he did in the middle of Trafalgar Square. He's presumably eating his way through Sunday lunch today because he looks a bit on the thin side after fasting for such a long time. We have St Patrick's Day as well, but you wouldn't know it listening to Ireland's officials. And of course, we've got lots and lots to hold those bozos in Parliament to account for. It's nearly the start of another week, and everyone knows that the Mike Graham Show is, of course, the one and only place to be. And just because you know you want it, here it is. This is the Roundup.
But right now, Sarah Pochin's here. She is, of course, Reformer MP for Runcorn and Helsby. Sarah, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike. How are you?
I'm very well indeed. Very good to see you. Before we start, shall we play? We played it already once on the show because we wanted to show people, you know, what happened in Trafalgar Square yesterday, and you highlighted it. So let's, if we can, Pooch, play a quick clip of Sarah and Sadiq Khan.
Yesterday evening, on this very spot in Trafalgar Square, Sadiq Khan, the Mayor of London, hailed the power of being Muslim. From watching that video, would you agree that that is a show of force and intimidation from the Muslim community? And does this resemble Great Britain to you? Why did they do it? Because they could.
Yeah, I think we all watched that with sort of incredulity, really, because, you know, none of us are anti-Semitic or anti-Islam or anti-Christian, but it just doesn't seem right, does it?
Well, Mike, I would describe it as spine-chilling. When I saw that video that Sadiq Khan put on, his socials, I watched it and I actually felt, really quite sick because listening to that call to prayer in our country, in Trafalgar Square, one of the, most iconic places in the heart of our great capital, I found it was intimidating, it was threatening. And why did they do it? Why do they need to do it? And also, why is it allowed?
Why is it allowed, and why is it necessary as well, would be the question I would ask. What is Sadiq Khan trying to prove, right? Because he stood there and he was quite blatant about saying not only does he want it to be the biggest iftar in Britain, he wants it to be not only the biggest iftar in Europe, but the biggest in the Western world. Who's he playing that to?
Well, he's basically showing that, in his view, London should be, supporting and promoting the Muslim community above all others. Because I guarantee you, if the Jewish community tried to do the same, it wouldn't be allowed.
No.
We have, particularly at a time when globally things are so sensitive, we are effectively, or our closest ally in the United States is at war with Iran, a Muslim country who wants to do nothing but bring to bring destruction on the West. So at one of the most febrile times globally that we've experienced for years, this is allowed to go on in London. What kind of message is that sending to the people of this country? And what kind of message is it sending internationally to our allies?
Yeah, exactly right. And we've already got a real problem with the United States of America. Keir Starmer and his allies, as he calls them, the idiot Mark Carney, the completely non-existent brain of Emmanuel Macron, all of these useless European kind of so-called leaders, who are all going, let's just de-escalate, but we haven't got any weapons, we haven't got any means to actually force Iran to capitulate. We'll just hope for the best. I mean, it's embarrassing, isn't it?
It's utterly embarrassing. And just before we leave that actual incident in Trafalgar Square, that meeting in Trafalgar Square, I want to say one more thing, Mike, that really is troubling me at the moment. There's not, as you would expect, there was not a single woman that we could see on those that video clip. And I am increasingly concerned about the insidious I think, rise of inequality, if we're not careful, of women in this country. And I think one of my ancestors through marriage actually has a plaque in Parliament Square, Agnes Pochin. She was a suffragette, and her name's there. And, when you think back, who would have thought that 100 years later or 100 years plus later, we're now in a situation where people like myself, who have a platform, who have a voice, are saying we should be concerned about the potential inequality and suppression of women that is starting to creep into our society through the increasing power and growth of the Muslim community.
Yeah, well, look at what happened in Gorton and Denton, where you've got family voting going on. And family voting is a rather nice way of describing a bloke dragging his wife down to the polling station, marching her into the ballot booth with a curtain drawn behind them, telling her which way she's going to vote. It's not exactly suffragette freedom, is it?
It absolutely isn't. And we know, don't we, that with this new czar, the anti-Muslim hostility czar that Labour are introducing. So not only do we have the Mayor of London promoting these type of events in what is fundamentally a Christian country, and yet I guarantee you, if Christians tried to meet in Trafalgar Square en masse, then the police would probably tell them they couldn't do it. Yeah. But why have we not prescribed certain groups like the Muslim Brotherhood? Why have we not prescribed the Iranian, the National Guard movement? It's absolutely shocking that this government will not stand up and speak and on behalf of the British people and increase our security. Like I say, at a time of such global instability, and there's so much we can talk about. You asked me about the US and our position there with Iran, and whether we're going to support our allies. I mean, Keir Starmer has not come out. He should have come out straight away and said, yes, of course, we will stand by the closest ally we have in the world. And let's not make any mistake, Mike, without the US, we as a nation are defenseless. So let me just say that again. Without the US, we are defenseless because successive governments have let the defense of this nation fall into such decline that we are not even able to get a warship over there, are we, to join the many other countries that are sending physical resource over to the Straits of Hormuz. That is the situation we're in. So not to stand by immediately our closest ally, the United States of America, is an absolute disgrace.
Yeah, well, I think Rachel Reeves has told the Royal Navy that she can't afford to give them any money for the diesel for the boat. So it's sitting currently, in becalmed waters somewhere near the Bay of Biscay, because she's got to give all the money to the migrants who are coming in, who need a home and a house over their head. I mean, these are not people who have to worry about energy prices because they get everything for free.
I'll tell you something, this is a frightening statistic. So our welfare bill in the last 12 months is £300 billion. Our defence budget is £55 billion. How is that possible?
I know. It's bonkers, isn't it? 6 times. Meanwhile, Nigel Farage yesterday got up and announced that you guys are running a competition to pay people's energy bills for an entire year, possibly an entire street's energy bills. Pooch and I have been wondering whether we can do some kind of deal with you on the sly to get our energy bills paid for and just forget everybody else. Can we do that?
For you, Mike, we can do anything, I'm sure. But, I love it when you call your producer Pooch. Yeah. I'm Pooch.
You're Poach, yes. Poach and Pooch. Yeah, you could do a show together. It'd be great.
I think, Do you know what? That would be great.
It would be. But he's, of course, by the, so-called serious media being called, it's all a gimmick. It's like, he's learning from Elon Musk, who gave a couple of $1 million away to people to vote in particular elections. But, I mean, the idea that the mainstream kind of media and mainstream political parties are calling what you're doing a gimmick is ridiculous, isn't it? Because that's all they do.
Well, look, the point that Reform are making and have made constantly about the shocking situation that this country is in with respect to supporting itself with our own energy is that, excuse me, so much money is wasted. Billions of pounds are wasted on the mad net zero policies of, the moronic Ed Miliband, and we will stop that. Net zero will go under a Reform government, and the billions that are paid will, and that you and I have to pay on our energy bills in terms of the levies every time a wind turbine gets put in. That is more levies on yours and my energy bills, more costs on our energy bills. Let's make no mistake as a nation that net zero and Ed Miliband's policies and his solar panels and his wind turbines and his carbon capture projects, of which in Runcorn and Helsby, I have one that is costing £25 billion. Absolute crazy numbers. What I could do with that for resources in Runcorn and Helsby, a place that has no further education facility past 16 and no swimming pool. It's ridiculous. And yet they can find the money for these carbon capture projects. That's where Reform will decrease your energy bills, our energy bills. But not only that, what we launched yesterday was a policy to take VAT off energy bills.
Right.
So that was a policy that was introduced, I think, under the last Conservative government, but I'm not 100% sure about that. But it has been with us for many years now. But we will take that off. VAT should come off our energy bills. So those are the two approaches. And we estimate that the VAT off energy bills would result in £50 a year coming off your energy bills. And in terms of the levies, to £150 in terms of the net zero levies. So in total, £200. And yes, going back to the competition, it's a way of, isn't it? Just, it's a bit of fun. But the point is we are highlighting the fact that so much could be done to help the cost of living for people in this country. But Ed Miliband refuses, doesn't he, to see, he's so blinkered with this net zero. He won't turn the taps on in the North Sea. He wouldn't even consider getting shale gas out of the ground. We are surrounded by energy, our own energy. And yet, do you know, in the UK, we use 1.4 million barrels of oil a day. We have to import half of that. Why? We're sitting on it. We've got it in the North Sea. Just turn the taps on, Ed Miliband.
Yeah, it's absolutely insane. I mean, and as you say, I mean, he turned a very strange colour of puce on Sunday when he was shown a graphic which said that actually, in addition to the VAT, 38% of the cost of the petrol that you put in your car is fuel tax, right? And if you really wanted to help people out, you could take, 10% off that and make it 28% instead of 38%, but he doesn't want to do that. Would you do that?
He doesn't want.
Would you consider doing that?
Yeah, 100%. Nigel and Robert Jenrick were talking about this actually at a fuel station in, I think it was in Robert's constituency last week. Absolutely, because this is going to be the next thing. If the Straits of Hormuz are not opened up, we know that eventually, before too long, then we're going to have issues, aren't we, on the forecourt? Already, I'm sure people will be thinking about filling their cars up, and we all know what happens when, that happens, and we get these queues, and the prices are obviously already creeping up, but. The danger is that prices will go through the roof, and we will start to be what's the word when you're rationed on fuel. Let's not set any hairs running. But the fact is, if the Straits of Hormuz don't open up soon, then of course, clearly, we are going to be facing fuel shortages.
Yeah. Well, let's have a look at what Rachel Reeves has got to say about it, because I'm sure she's got the answer for us. Have a look.
that there is an important role for oil and gas, especially at the moment. You see countries like Canada and Norway increasing their production, and every country's got to play their part in ensuring that those energy supplies are there when we need them.
Perhaps we could get a Rachel Reeves interpreter in to see what she meant. I mean, here is my Rachel Reeves picture, which I always hold up.
Is that Richard III?
Yeah, it's Richard III. Well, she looks just like him. She's going to end up in a car park in Leicester.
I couldn't possibly comment
No, of course not.
on that, obviously.
But she just talks absolute gobbledygook. There's nothing in that sentence that she said that leads me to think that she even knows what she's talking about.
Well, and this is what the British people are so concerned about is, this government represents a wonderful word salad of absolute nonsense. What reform talk is common sense. We talk in a language that people understand. And what is so difficult to understand about turn the taps on, Ed Miliband, let's get more oil out of the North Sea. We've got it there. We've got a supply for decades. And we know, don't we, that if we rely on the wind, if we rely on the sun, then you get into this situation. It's not producing enough to keep us going. You get into a situation of global instability, and we are totally exposed as a nation, and we shouldn't be. There is no reason. A reform government will get gas out of the ground. We will get more oil out of the North Sea, and we will make this country energy sufficient, which is what it should be. There is no reason why we should be in this situation.
No, absolutely not. Sarah, listen, have a great weekend. Good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Sarah Pochin there, reporting in from Runcorn and Helsby, Reform's MP there. She's right. OK then, now, time for the meltdown. Now, we talked about this morning, Pooch and I, because I'm getting sick to death of the amount of money that is going out of my bank account as opposed to the amount of money coming in, right? Because it does it now, it sums it up now. It gives you a little number every time you sign in. It goes amount out, amount in. And it's starting to look very, very unbalanced, right? And there's a reason for that. The reason is that this government is charging more and more money for all the things that it does and trying to make us poorer, effectively, right? And as petrol prices go up this weekend, as heating oil prices go up, as all kinds of other prices go up for food, for travel, for rent. If you're renting a flat, that's probably gone up. Your mortgage is going up. There's a mortgage time bomb on the way, according to the Daily Mail. But all I know is that the people who are supposedly our political masters, I don't call them masters, with a capital M, because they're not. But the people who run this country are basically taking the mickey out of all of us because they get everything for free, right? You might remember last week I told you how Ed Davey charges the taxpayer £320,000 a year to run an office in Westminster, right? He employs, I'm sure, quite a few people. But what exactly does he do? What's he for? Does he really need 10 people to advise him on how to dance in front of a load of adoring fans? Or how to, pretend to be daddy cool with his weirdo sunglasses on? What does he do for that money? Similarly, we get people like James Cleverly. And I'm not picking on these people particularly for any reason, but James Cleverly, I once interviewed, who has a constituency in Essex, right, which is not very far from London. He's able to claim for a second home because he works in London, even though his main home is in Essex, which is a train ride away. It's only, less than an hour probably. But he's allowed to claim his heating allowance, because I said to him, we were actually investigating some government minister who had claimed, I think it was Rachel Reeves, who claims for her heating allowance for her second home, because she also has a constituency outside of London, right? And as I was explaining it to him, I could see his face kind of grimacing slightly. And I said, James, surely you don't claim for a second home heating allowance, do you? And he sort of looked slightly sheepishly and said, well, the thing is, it is allowed under the rules. And so, of course, that's what happens, right? That's what people do. You get into politics and everything is for free. They claim for toilet paper. They claim for paper clips. They claim for stationery. They claim for travel. They claim for accommodation. They claim for heating. They claim for their council tax. You know, so these people who make the rules, who tell us that we should tighten our belts or that we should maybe drive slower, or in Ed Miliband's case, that we should drink warm beer because it would be better for the climate. They're full of advice for us because they don't have to pay for anything. And I'm getting sick to death of subsidising these bozos. You know, there's fewer and fewer of us and more of them. And it's not just MPs either. It's councillors. It's people who work in the public sector, civil servants. You know, people that even work in the NHS. They're all working on your pound. You know, if you go out every day and make an honest living and you're in private sector business, i.e. you drive a van, you work as a plumber, you work maybe as a shelf stacker in Tesco's, maybe you work on, you know, building sites, or, you know, you work in an accountancy firm. If you're working for a private sector company, you are basically bankrolling this country, because without you, there is no money. You know, without you, there is nothing to pay Peter Mandelson with. Without you, there's nothing to pay the migrants with. Without you, there would be no migrant hotels. Kemi Badenoch wouldn't have a salary if it wasn't for you. Keir Starmer, the man who thinks that he's in charge of the nation's kind of well-being, wouldn't be paid anything if it wasn't for the taxpayer. Angela Rayner, I'm just looking at the ticker going underneath me as we speak. Angela Rayner takes a punt on leadership. There would be no Angela Rayner without taxpayers, right? She owes the taxman loads and loads of money, but she hasn't paid it yet. Nigel Farage makes his own money, but even he is in receipt of public money. The NHS would not exist if it wasn't for taxpayers. And yet, every single working day, we get stooped by these people who tell us how we should be living, who tell us how we should be paying for things, who tell us how we should be tightening our belts, who tell us exactly what we should and should not do. Well, I'm sick of it. I don't know how we deal with these people. I don't know whether we can have some kind of tax strike, but it would be nice, wouldn't it? Because I've had enough. You can't squeeze me anymore. The pips are already squeaking. I'm all out. And all I get is bill after bill after bill. I just got my new council tax bill, you know. It's actually gone down a bit from last year because they charged me so much last year that I think I'm in excess. Meanwhile, the price of everything continues to rise. Oil, up. Petrol, up. Food, up. You know, taxis, up. Buses, up. Trains, up. Everything up, except for your wealth, which is down. So anyway, have a nice weekend. And now I've just worked out I haven't paid for the parking. So I'm good. Right. Now, I'm delighted to say, well, we're now joined by Charlie Jobson. Charlie, good to see you, man.
Great to be here.
Thank you for coming in. Now, I've described your business that you've just started, and it may not have been entirely correct how I did it. So you tell us.
I think
more.
it was a good summary.
The People's House, right?
Essentially a third chamber for the people.
Yeah.
It's a live website right now where you can go online, vote on every bill and law that's ever gone through Parliament.
Yeah.
And then what we do is we compare the people's vote to the Parliament's vote, and it's essentially a comparison of public will against parliamentary action.
Okay. And so that way you can basically present the public's view pretty much on everything.
That's what we want, yeah.
Okay. And how did you decide to come up with this idea? What's your background?
I mean, I've had the idea for a while, right. I would say a couple of years, to be honest. I didn't understand why something like this didn't exist, right. Because it's technologically possible.
Yes.
I guess all things sort of coalesced, be it the technological landscape that allowed me to make it on my own, and also the public will at the moment for crying out for something like this that have resulted in me making houseofthepeople.com
right.
at this moment in time.
Yeah, and so basically, I mean, without giving too much away, your dad got in touch with me. I think it was last week.
I think so, yeah.
And he sort of pointed me to your website or your Twitter page, which has now got 25.9 thousand followers. At the time, I think you had about 1,000, right?
I think less than that, mate. I think we started off with 22 followers on Sunday morning. Right. Got your repost. I was on the phone to my mum. Shot up to 100 followers, which for the time, you know, obviously we almost quintupled in the space of half an hour.
Right.
And it all just went mad.
Yeah.
I mean, kept getting more reposts.
But I was saying, by the end of the day, I think it was at 10,000 or 15,000.
I think by the end of my day, it was about 20K. I think I went to sleep about 10 a.m.
It's at HOTP official, House of the People. But if you put House of the People into Twitter, you can find it. And it says this: House of the People is a democracy-first social platform where every UK citizen can vote, support or oppose every bill and law since 2006. So it must take quite a bit of research and work. I mean, I mean,
with that's the beauty of large language models now with AI, is that is what they're good at, is processing large amounts of data.
Tell me what a large language, you've already lost me.
It's essentially just ChatGPT.
Okay.
Just ChatGPT. Data processing. But the main thing, there's not that much AI in this. I mean, all I had to set up for the infrastructure-wise was allowing people to vote on the legislation.
Okay.
The most time-consuming is getting the summaries out, which are AI-assisted.
Right.
Because, I mean, Parliament doesn't provide summaries for half these bills. That's been one of the difficulties.
Well, this is one of the difficulties with the way that government and Parliament works in this country, that, you know, it's all so kind of impenetrable, isn't it?
I think purposefully so.
Yeah, I think so. Well, I always said this, when Tony Blair brought in the Freedom of Information Act, right, everyone went, oh, this is great, because now we can ask questions and get information. Actually, it was the complete opposite, because it was so that people could give excuses as to why. Like when I was up in Scotland at the time, we'd ask the Scottish Parliament, you know, we want some information on this, and oh, that's too expensive. We can't do research on that, too expensive. Or we can give you this bit, but it's going to be redacted for that reason.
I know, and that, to me,
all of that.
That's undemocratic.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole point, one of the main tenets of House of the People is advocating for transparency on Parliament's behalf.
Right.
It makes our job easier as well. So when we're calculating what we call the democratic gap, comparing Parliament's vote to the people's vote, one of the difficulties in that is that a lot of these votes pass on voice vote, which essentially means the Speaker listens to the House and listens to who shouts aye or no the loudest, and then that's how the vote, and it's only when someone contests that a vote or a division takes place. To me, I mean, it is an archaic model, and it's so easily rectifiable with something like House of the People.
Yeah.
All you've got to do, log a vote, it takes 10 seconds, people are already doing it now.
Yeah. And so how physically does that work? Do they go on a website?
Houseofthepeople.com. It's going to be an app within about a month, I would say. Okay. Which will make it a lot easier to access and more efficient. I mean, I want the UK public to have a much greater involvement in the democratic process and parliamentary process of this country.
Right. And as a business, is it a business that is a viable business already? Will it become one, or what's your hope for that?
That's the thing. So revenue, to be honest, wasn't on the front of my mind when first building this. I was building it I just truly was passionate about fixing a problem that I saw within the system.
Yeah.
Currently with revenue model, we're working off donations, which I'm extremely grateful to everyone who's donated so far. We're nearing £1,000 now.
Right.
Beyond that, I think we're probably going to do advertising, non-data tracked advertising.
On the website, because if you've got that much traffic going through it, you'll make money that way.
So then that's a viable means.
So your background to get to this point is what? Did you go to uni?
It's not that long, to be honest, but yes.
Did you go to uni?
I did. I went to Durham Uni from 2020 to 2024.
Okay.
Graduated that, had a job at a political forum of sorts as an assistant for about a year. Quit that to do this full time because I can't explain it other than I knew people needed this. Although the 25,000 followers in the day was absolutely astounding, it was something that I've been working towards for about 8 months now.
And people say that an awful lot of young people are kind of switched off from politics. They're not interested in it. They don't really care. Is that true, or would you say that's changing?
I don't think that's true. I think, for example, when we're seeing a lower, 59.7% turnout last time in voting elections, which is not very high, and that's not even including the people who aren't registered. When you go and take a look at Twitter or other social medias, what you're seeing every day is people that are not apathetic about politics. What they're apathetic about or disengaged with is the system. Because they don't see how their vote actually makes an impact on the system itself, which I can understand, because when you look at House of the People, what you're going to see is that essentially every MP votes along party lines the vast, vast majority of time. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the lowest party alignment rating, so party loyalty rating, average, is 97%. Which is astounding. So,
and they have the whipping system and all of that, right?
I mean, that's an insane system in the first instance, I think, when you're trying to actually represent the people. And this is I see House of the People as an update that politics needs and deserves.
Yeah, and politicians, have any politicians kind of followed it?
We've had a few following the Twitter, or the X, which is great to see, and I'd urge them to, this is a force. This is not an antagonistic revolutionary force, this is an update for politics. I want MPs to get on board, as a few already have been, because we've got specific MP profiles, so they can see what their constituents are saying and get a direct line of communication from constituent to representative, which makes their jobs a hell of a lot easier if they want it to.
Sure. So as far as the way that it will work in the future, will you sort of look to preempt bills, for example? Say, for example, there's a bill coming up on the right to life or abortion, or something comes up on the right to die and all of that. Would you be getting ahead of that and saying...
You're saying prior
to any law being made, would you go, this is what people think?
That's an idea. I mean, one thing we're working towards at the moment is user-submitted bills as well. I think getting in there preemptively, it'll be great. So for a brief rundown of the parliamentary system for anyone who's unaware, the bill gets read out at first reading, and then the in-principle vote is the second reading. That's the one we really care about. That's asking the MPs, do you support this in principle? We want to get people voting prior to that second reading vote, so the MPs have an actual, they have data to go off.
Good idea.
Okay. Yeah, Kelvin approves. So
Thank you.
That's
Cheers,
good.
Kelvin.
Yeah, he's got a load of money to put into it as well.
Good. We need that.
But also the other thing is interesting is the number of amendments as well that I think people will be very confused about.
Yeah.
Where you suddenly go, I think it's happened with the right to die, but they've got so many amendments, they'll never get through them.
Yeah.
And that's, again, it's a sort of filibustering manoeuvre.
Again, that's something. So we currently display all divisions, which again are just votes when the House divides. All amendments are also available on the website houseofthepeople.com. I think that it would be useful to maybe get a way of structuring those a little bit better so they can be easily digestible, because some bills have over 600 amendments, so it would take a hell of a long time to go through those all.
And in terms of the acquiring of all the data and just the presentation of it, does that all get done automatically? I'm starting to sound like a really old person asking this question.
It's fine.
But it's extraordinary what you can do, isn't it?
It is. I mean,
is it like a one-man band? Is it just you?
Well, I've got a lot of people around me that I look on for advice, etc. And I'm very much so looking forward to when House of the People isn't my thing anymore. Where I want my name to be detached from this, to be honest, and just have it become an integral part of the political system, because I think that's what it should be.
Yeah. And I'm surprised in a way that there isn't somebody who's had that name nicked and put on a domain.
I know. We have got the intellectual property.
So that's great that you managed to get that. Super chats for Charlie.
Thanks,
okay,
guys.
let's have a look. This from Barker. House of the People. How do you limit voting to UK residents?
So
is that what on your? He means on the website? I guess.
On the website, yeah.
I mean, do you have to register?
You do.
To vote?
So to vote, you have to register. So we currently use the same verification system as UK.petitions, which is government associated.
Right.
That's a postcode and an email. I understand the limitations of that system in itself. I'm sure the government do as well, but they haven't, sought to update it either. What we could do is we could get more stringent verification measures. If we do, say, for example, bank grade biometric verification that you use every day to log into your phone, but rather than using it you use it for good.
Yeah.
And that means this becomes the most accurate voting platform ever. I hope I'm not overstepping there, but it genuinely would.
Yeah. Because a lot of the polling companies have been in trouble. I mean, there was a story this week, wasn't there, that YouGov had to admit they actually were underplaying Reform's representation because they were not doing something in particular that they should have been doing, and they've now admitted that they were actually, underplaying Reform's percentage.
That's the difficulty of what they, I can't remember the exact system they use, but when you're taking a small database and then extrapolating that data and with your own algorithms, so say you have 1,000 people voting, I mean, how is that representative of a country? It's not.
It isn't.
So you can manipulate that data in so many ways. What we want to do with House of the People is, I want this in everyone's pocket. I mean, we have instant communication devices we use every day to voice our opinion. It takes genuinely a click of a button. You can get this done in 10 seconds. Voice your opinion on a bill. Let your MP know what you think.
Yeah, okay. And
Comments?
And more comments?
Yeah.
Okay, let's have a look. Just had a quick peek at the House of the People website. Looks really interesting, so I will register.
Thank you very much.
As OC2. I think this is the great idea. I thought we should and could have a direct democratic process. I'm so pleased that this young man has started moving the mountain. It's a hell of a lot of work, we should support House of the People. He's talking about him, not me, I think. A very modest chap. I give you permission to marry my daughter.
Thank you.
Blimey. It's a bit early for that sort of caper. But no, it's brilliant. It's a great idea. Also, Kelvin was talking earlier about the whole idea of kids coming out of university. I'm sorry to say the word kids.
That's all right.
And you find that actually you'd be better off trying to start a business, trying to do something on your own. I mean, have you got an experience you could tell us about of trying to get a job, right? So tell us about that.
I've got a hell of experience applying for, I'd say all me and my friends probably at uni, out of uni, applying for over 100 grad jobs, all looking about a 35 grand salary at the most, which is livable. But compare it, I mean, this is why the country, there is such a feeling of a need for change or a need for something like House of the People.
Yeah.
You're looking at GDP per capita. If you look at it 20 years ago when my dad came out of uni, he was on 30 grand, could buy a house for 100 grand. That house price to salary ratio was accessible. Now, if I'm looking to buy even a pretty bad place in London, it's going to cost me at least 300 grand.
Yeah, lucky if you can get that.
You'd be very lucky. And that's something that we need to highlight. But if you look at the political discourse over the last 10 years, all we hear is, and I don't want to say lies, but definitely obfuscation at the very minimum of saying GDP is rising.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
That means nothing.
Right, it does.
Your dad didn't come out of university 20 years ago.
Oh yeah, he's a bit older than that. About what is he? 62 or I think that is.
Yeah, he's a bit younger than me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, we had the pleasure of winning a football tournament together at Wembley. I think you might have been there actually.
No, but
it was when we played for the joint Daily Express Daily Star team, and we won the tournament. It was sponsored by Littlewoods. Played at Wembley, the old Wembley Stadium.
I think he's told me a few times.
Brilliant. But so, did you find that nobody was offering you a job?
Well, I got one in the end. So it takes a hell of a lot of work, and I know friends that extremely qualified friends. I've got one. Give him a shout out now, D. He had a degree in law, undergrad, a master's in finance, both from good unis, and he was stuck working as a postman for a year because he couldn't get anything else. And it's like, it's a perfectly respectable job, but. It does beg the question of why go to uni in the first instance if graduate jobs are so oversubscribed.
Because if you'd started this in 2020, right, 2021, who knows where you would be now? 5 years ago.
Who knows? I don't think I would have been able to at 18. To be honest, I don't think didn't know. I wouldn't have thought of it. To be honest. So I think uni was great for that, and I had a great time at university. A great time with my lecturers. Really appreciative of them. But when it comes to the financial ROI, I mean, I have a hell of a lot of student debt now that I've got to work out how to pay off.
Yeah, that's not helpful, is it? What about in terms of the subject matter that you cover? Have you noticed a trend of something that people are particularly more interested than anything else, or what particular areas are people kind of piling in on, if you like?
What, you mean on House of the People?
On House of the People, yeah.
So the most voted on bill currently is the removal of the 2-child limit for the benefits cap.
Right.
So that one is also, I think, largest Democratic gap at the moment. I think 75% Democratic gap, which essentially means the public have 7% support for it, 93% opposition.
What, removing the cap?
No. The public oppose removing the cap, sorry.
Right.
Yeah, the public oppose removing the cap, 93% opposition, whereas Parliament had an 81% support of it, which is a stark contrast.
That's a little bit like Brexit. I remember Brexit, when we were sitting down in College Green on sort of 2018, 2019, and all these MPs would come out, and you could see that they just kind of were distastefully having to talk about, leaving the European Union because they were all Remainers, pretty much. I mean, almost to a man and woman, apart from a very small number, which is why it took so long to get it over the line. So it sounds, from what you're saying, that people don't wish to be paying more benefits to families who have got more kids.
That's the data we've got so far. But as I said, our user base is still growing. This is just the beginning. I don't want to step out of line and say that this is conclusive data because it's not yet. We've got our voter base. It's a great inkling.
But it's as good an indicator as many.
It's a great start. Yeah, it's a good as we've got about 1,500 votes on there, which is probably the same as they poll half the time.
Sure.
But definitely, I mean, just share it. If you like the idea, just share it with everyone you can, please, because the more votes we get on there, the more conclusive the data is, the harder it is to ignore.
All right. And so it's houseofthepeople.com.
HOTP official for the Twitter.
Yeah. Anywhere else?
You'll find us on Instagram as well, House of the People official.
Yeah.
But we need to start populating that a bit more.
Okay. All
Yeah, but we'll try and get everywhere.
Well, listen, let us know whenever you've got anything good going on, and we can just keep pumping stuff towards you.
I will.
Which would be great. Charlie Jobson, great to see you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed. Just before you go, and before we go, should we do? What do you want to do? If you want to bumper sticker, a couple of people are asking, how do you get a car sticker? Here's what you do: send a size C5 stamped address envelope to fit an A5 bumper sticker to the Mike Graham Show, PO Box 257, Battle, East Sussex, TN33 3FS. You can see it there. We should be able to get them out to you in a couple of days, which is all good. And if you do actually get one, do take a picture of where you've stuck it, which I think we've got one. Is it Sheila? Is it Sheila?
Yeah.
I can't work out what is that. What is that? It looks like a little.
Looks like a toboggan.
It's a little like it looks like a toboggan or a little racing car or something, a one-person racing car. Sheila McCarthy on Substack. Anyway, great. So heron of the day, perhaps. Our kind of theme. Now, this is our herons of the world, and the black-capped night heron, which is on the right from Darren, that was sent in, and that's the exact same one that I saw on the Thames, because Donald MacLeod, who sent us a crane, our partner, he said that's not a crane, and he said that's not a heron, but it is. And then Herne Bay, to the left there, Shepherd Neame, one of the great breweries in down there in Kent. The Heron is the name of the pub, and apparently Herne Bay is actually named after a heron as well. So there we are.
Interesting.
Yeah, because somebody told us that before, and we think that might be a grey heron in the actual sign. And finally, before we go at 9:29, a bit of Pooch's Pooch.
Yeah,
We play a dog video at the end of every show just to cheer people up for all the gloom and doom they've put through.
a new theme that we played, but
Food. I just couldn't stop thinking about it.
Have we not played this one?
So, yeah. So, I went to the fridge and I opened up the meat drawer. You know what the meat drawer is, right?
Yeah.
What was in there? Well, I'll tell you what was in there. You know that bacon that's like maple? It's got maple flavor.
The maple kind, yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I took that out and I thought,
Yeah.
I know who would like that. Me. So I ate it.
Oh, no. You're kidding me.
Nope. Not kidding. I also noticed there was some beef in there. Yeah, steak, juicy. Well, I ate that too. But I went back to the fridge just a few minutes ago.
Amazing.
And I put something together really special. You're going to love this one. I took some chicken.
Yeah.
I put some cheese on it. And I covered it with...
Covered it with what?
I covered it with cat treats.
Yeah.
Then guess what?
What?
I gave it to the cat.
That's great, isn't it? I got one here from Chris. I'm an avid fan from Carcassonne in the south of France. I'll see if I've got a couple more pins to stick in the map behind me. But listen, another great show. It's 9:30, believe it or not. Incredibly. I'm joining House of the People as we speak.
Yes.
Says WP. So hopefully you'll get another little boost.
That's fantastic. Little
Every
3
time you
years
do
already,
something, yeah.
Great.
But great to see you, and good luck with it all. Thanks to Kelvin McKenzie for London. She's a London councillor. Layla, very good morning to you.
Hiya, how are you, Mike?
Yeah, I'm very well. Good to see you. Welcome to the Mike Graham Show.
Thank you.
We've just been talking about optimism, and Ellie's written a piece about it because I think she's right. It's not. There's nothing wrong with pointing out that things are not as good as they should be, but it's also nothing wrong really in saying that we can still fix them. I mean, you must be, as part of reform, sure of the fact that you can fix things because they do need fixing. But what's your take on that?
Yeah, of course we need optimism, of course, and we need, and I say that when I talk about being Mayor of London, I want to show a vision of London, an optimistic vision of London. I want to see it thriving. I want to see independent shops. I want to see businesses opening up. I want to see my kids, people's kids being able to afford a home, safe streets. That is optimism. But optimism doesn't mean ignoring what's wrong.
No, of course.
When you go to a doctor and they tell you, you're gravely ill, but there's a cure, you are declaring that something's wrong, and you're optimistic that they can be saved. It's the same with London.
Yes, and it can be. And What would you say if you were asked, and I'm sure you will be many times between now and the next election, what is wrong with London right now?
So I think there's a lot of things wrong with London. I think there has been a lack of priority on public safety. In fact, I feel it's been deprioritized. You don't see police on the streets. In a city of 9 million, we only have 2 24-hour counters open. Police stations have been shut. Visible policing has been cut. Stop and search have been so politicized that I speak to police officers and they cannot arrest someone who just smells of marijuana.
Yeah.
Face coverings are used regularly by criminals to commit crime. And as a senior prosecutor in London, I know it's extremely difficult to convict beyond reasonable doubt when their face is covered. So I think without law and order, for me, everything else breaks down, because there's a freedom to being safe. There's a freedom to whipping your phone out whenever you want. There's a freedom to letting your kids go out and not trace them all the time. There's a freedom to opening up a shop and not worrying that you're going to be shoplifted. And those freedoms for me don't exist anymore. We do have a rape is reported every hour. Only 6% end up in a charge. And so that is a problem with London. And I do think also there is a problem with the civic culture of London. I think we've shied away from declaring ourselves proudly to be the capital of the United Kingdom. And I think there has to be a strong civic British culture.
Oh, have we just lost Layla?
No. I don't feel it's a British city anymore.
Yeah.
And that for me has to come back. It has to be glorious. It has to be British. It has to be, represent everything that's incredible about our country.
I was born and raised in London. I lived here most of my life, with a few exceptions. I was in New York for 10 years. I lived in Bath when I went to university. I lived in Scotland for a while.
I also lived in America.
Yeah, and the thing that I say to people about, when I went to New York in the 1980s, 1983, 84, all of the migrants and the immigrants who were there, and it was a massive melting pot, the people from the Dominican Republic, people from Central America, people from Russia, all over the world. But they all wanted to be American. They all wanted to be from New York, right? And
they all adapted the American accent.
Yeah.
They all adapted the American accent, and they're like, and they were proud to be American.
Yes. Well, I tell a story about there's a guy who I still think works for the Times, a guy called Charles Bremner, and he'd been the Russian correspondent, and he spoke Russian, and very clever man, and he got sent to America. He was a New York correspondent, and he and I were sharing a cab one day, and it was something called Skyline, which used to be this kind of limo service that you would hire. And the guy who was driving us was obviously, you could tell by the way he spoke that he was Russian, and he spoke in broken English. And Charles Bremner thought that he'd be clever and go to this guy, where are you from? So that they could probably practice his Russian, right? And the guy went, New Jersey. And that was it.
Yeah.
He wasn't from Russia anymore. He was from New Jersey.
No. Because the US say, if you come here, you become us.
Yeah.
Right? And that's fine. And I think that's what we have to say. You come to Britain, of course you're going to have your own culture and your own religion and your way of life, but you have to abide by the umbrella civic life and the British way of life. Because I think when you celebrate every religion, every culture equally, it creates division, it creates confusion, and it dilutes the national culture. There is an operating system, I think, Mike, in every country.
Yeah.
Right? And the operating system in Britain is a British one. It's Christian, number one. It's, it's everyone's equal under the law. It's tolerance, but not self-erasure. There is a difference to me between tolerance and submission. And it's telling people, listen, you are welcome here on the basis that you contribute and you become British. And becoming British is not just a passport. Becoming British is a way of life. And you know what? It's what's in your heart. I would do whatever it takes for this country. But you're right. Americans are different. Immigrants, when you talk to them, they are like, I'm American. And even my kids, my husband's American. And when my kids watch an American football match or whatever, and the national anthem comes on, automatically they put their hand on their chest.
Yeah. And
for me, that's quite remarkable to have a look at, because I go speak to different schools here. And it's total opposite in schools. They hate our country. 16, 17-year-olds, oh my God, they're ashamed of our history. That's what they're being taught.
Yeah. And that's terrible. And look at what happened this week. We've been talking about it all week on the show. Sadiq Khan going to Trafalgar Square to boast about the fact that, not only does he want an iftar to take place there, but he wants it to be the biggest iftar in the Western world. And you kind of go, sorry, that's not your job. Your job is to be the mayor of London. Your job is to promote London. Your job is to not segregate London. And what he did this week was to segregate London.
I agree. Listen, for me, there is a slippery slope. You know, you've got, across the world, you have different types of worshipping, right? For me, faith is deeply personal. And we are a Christian country, as we said. And I don't think we should have mass public display of Islamic prayers in one of our major civic squares, which is Trafalgar Square. It's wrong. And it's not just a celebration. This was a state-sponsored prayer where he took part in it. And listen, I don't see him taking part in mass state-sponsored Christian prayers.
No.
So in that sense, he is favouring one over the other. But you know, I do think it's wrong. And there is a form of, I guess you could call it Islamism, where obviously on one spectrum you have the terrorists, but on the other spectrum, you know, the softer one that I think we are seeing a lot more in this country is a massive show of force of the religion, where it stops becoming religion and it literally becomes a show of force. And it could be interpreted as a show of dominance. Yeah. You know, when you have hundreds of men praying in our square, that's not for religious purposes. That is for me, you know, we're here and we want to know we're here. And that is a softer version, because Islamism is when religion starts coming into civic life and public life and politics. And for me, that side of it is what we saw in the prayers. Yeah. There was absolutely no need for that.
No, and all it's done is rile people. And he will of course say, well, of course it's made the racists come out of the woodwork, and, you know, if you criticise it. But I'm not a racist because I don't like the look of that. I'm a Londoner and I don't like the look of it.
Listen, I'm a Muslim. You don't see that in other countries. In some Muslims, you don't do that in Dubai. No. There are places of worship. That's why they exist. You know, you go and worship in the mosques. No one's got a problem with that. I remember Lee on TV, on GB News, he's always got the best sense of humour, Lee Anderson, and he said it rubs him the wrong way. And you know what? I get it. It rubs me the wrong way too. Yeah. It doesn't
seem. Yeah. I'm exactly the same. It just didn't seem right.
Yeah, we need to be the capital of the United Kingdom. And listen, it is a Christian country. It is a Christian capital. If we're going to celebrate any religion in such a public mass demonstration, then it has to be the Christian one.
Right. Exactly right. And as many people pointed out, there weren't very many women there, it seemed, from what we could see anyway. If they were at the back, I don't know. I mean, you as a Muslim woman have got the sort of unique situation going on where you get criticised by pretty much everyone, whether from the left or the right. You know, you've got the kind of Restore Britain crowd who think you shouldn't be allowed to stand, and I think they probably don't think you should even be allowed to live here, frankly. And then you've got the left who think that, you know, you're betraying your own cause, and, you know, you shouldn't be reformed.
Pulling the ladder up.
Yeah. From behind. So how do you cope?
The Muslims as well, by the way. The Muslims think I'm a fake Muslim. I'm pretending to be Muslim. I'm a kafir, and you know, retribution is coming to me.
Right. So how do you cope with all that?
Well, because listen, I know what I'm saying is right. You know, I know what I believe in my heart. For me, as I said, religion is a deeply personal thing. It should never, ever, you know, especially the Muslim religion, should never come into British politics. And people say, oh, you know, Layla, you know, how do you feel in your British Muslim community? I don't have a British Muslim community. I am British. Yeah. I don't befriend people on the basis of their religion or whatever. Right. And I think we need to go back to that. I know listen, people are going to say it's arrogant, but I feel what I'm saying is correct. I'm in the right party, and it's never about demonizing anyone. It's more about celebrating and protecting Great Britain and what makes us Great Britain, and our culture and our civic culture. And some people can flip it and say that's demonizing Muslims or that's demonizing immigrants. It is not. Right. It is a fierce protection and of our culture and what this country represents. My parents didn't come here for that. My parents came here for Great Britain.
Yeah.
You know, they moved to London because it's the capital of the United Kingdom, not because it's the capital of a Muslim country.
Right.
No, I showed my mum actually the prayers. So my mum's in her 90s, and I said, "Mum, you know, look at what's going on here. Does this make you happy? Is this what you moved here for?" She was quite shocked. She was like, "No, not at all." She goes, "Is this in London?" She actually thought I was showing her a video of the Middle East.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, even people in the Middle East are kind of shaking their heads, going, you know, have you seen what's going on in London? You know, because my parents came to London from Glasgow. My dad was a Protestant, my mum was a Catholic, and in those days that was like, you know, something that you didn't do. It was a mixed, you know, it was a mixed marriage as far as they were concerned, right? So they came to London because London was this kind of, you know, haven of tolerance, right? And I grew up as a Catholic. It's like me saying, you know, I don't have any friends who aren't Catholics. Because I actually, you know, it was one of those weird things. I went to Catholic school, and it wasn't until I was about 16 when I went to FE college that I realised there were actually other people in the world apart from Catholic. I thought everybody was Catholic. And I suddenly went into a room and I was the only one there. And I went, oh, okay, well, this is quite interesting. But, you know, the idea that you would sort of focus your life around other people who are exactly sharing your same religion isn't bonkers, isn't it?
But that is what goes in certain parts of the country. That's what goes on. I remember, didn't they do a poll like a few years ago in Luton? And I think 70% of the people actually thought like England was Sharia law. So you do have these silos and these communities that are totally removed from real life. I've prosecuted victims of domestic abuse, women, who are literally shipped in to be kind of slaves to their husband. They're not allowed out of the house.
Right.
And you know what? I think they could be empowered, these women, because they don't recognize that in this country they have rights that they don't have back home where they're from, and they're not told of those rights. You know, they're not allowed to leave the country without their husband, and that is happening in our country, to be honest.
I know, which is really, really weird. When it comes to it, and I don't know when the next election actually is, because it's not in May, is it? We don't get a London mayoral election for another couple of years, I don't think. How sure are you that you can? Because I don't know anyone that's ever voted for Sadiq Khan, and yet he keeps winning. So I don't know how he's doing that. So how are you going to beat him?
So someone told me an interesting stat, and I'm not sure if it's true. More people in London voted to leave the EU than voted for him in 2016.
Yes, that's true. Yeah.
So the thing is, Mike, and I tell all your viewers, the mayoral only has 40%. 40% of people vote in the mayoral in London. Yeah. To put that into perspective, 75% vote in the general election.
Right.
So people are so apathetic, and the problem is in London is you do have Conservatives and Labour. You know, one wins, the other complains. Nothing fundamentally changes. So people are like, "What's the point? I'm just not going to vote. Nothing changes. Whoever I vote for, it's the same." And so I'm telling people it will be different, and I'm going to galvanise those people that don't bother voting because they become apathetic. And, you know, most of the Reform members actually have never voted or engaged in politics. So we're already engaging, I guess you'd call them the silent majority, who've never thought that politics could make a difference. So I think we're there, and I get stopped by such a massive coalition of people in London who you would never think are your typical Reform voters.
Yeah.
Who just are desperate for change. You know, Poppy did talk about, of course, London's a great city. It's best in the world, or else I wouldn't stay and do what I'm doing to fight for it. But it needs leadership that really puts it on the pedestal. You listen to American podcasts or, you know, podcasts from abroad, and they do talk about a lost London.
Yeah.
And that's heartbreaking for me. Yeah. Heartbreaking. This is my city. This is my home. And you know what? I kind of feel like I feel like telling Sadiq Khan, you know, don't come and pursue your personal ideology and mess with my home. It's my home. It's my turf.
Right. And it's not his. You know, that's the thing. I mean, I liken him to like
ours. It's ours.
It's like he's a football manager, you know. You don't get to own London just because you get appointed to manage it, you know, and you can't change it in your own image just because you want to. And that's the problem. But that's what the lefties are like. You know, I saw last night you had a bit of a spat with that idiot Matthew Stadlen, you know, who calls me the most vile man he's ever met. He's never met me.
Wow.
Right? What's your final parting message to those lefties?
So I'll tell you, Mike. So for instance, he's trying to pedestrianise Oxford Street.
Yeah.
Right. Whether you agree with it or not, residents are overwhelmingly against it. Businesses are against it. And you know what he says? he says it is not up to residents to dictate what happens.
Oh,
on Oxford
really?
Street. Yeah. So basically, it's up to him. You know, how dare the voter actually voice an opinion that doesn't match his, and it's totally irrelevant. There was an article 2 years ago where he made a joke that he has like Kim Jong-un type approval rates.
Yeah.
That's how he sees himself. He sees himself as some
He's about the same
emperor
height
king
as him as well, isn't he?
Yeah, he sees himself as some emperor king of London. And I'm going to, you know, London is not his, it is ours. And I'm not winning it for me. Someone told me, oh, when you look out of London, do you see, you know, your whole, you know, that this is going to be yours? I said, absolutely not. I don't want it. It is for people. London has to go back to Londoners, has to work for Londoners.
Yeah, totally. Lady Cunningham, great to see you. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Have a lovely day. Lady Cunningham, crowds of people out there mobbing us, you know, that's one of the reasons. But I've got a poll going at the moment. Who's your favourite Ed? Is it Ed Balls, Ed Miliband, Ed Davey, or Mr. Ed, who's actually a horse? Mr. Ed's winning at the moment at 94%.
Ed Hughes.
It should have been Ed Hughes, actually. That's a good thought. Well, you know, certainly Ed Balls, Ed Miliband, Ed Davey, both, all three of them on 2%, because they're all hopeless Eds, must be said. Should we have a bit of, yeah, well, let's do it. Who thinks he's Mr. Cool, doesn't he? Daddy Cool. What a thought. Have a look. Somebody said yesterday, can he not get rid of this complete clown? Does he not realise how ridiculous he looks? I mean, the Lib Dems, in a moment when politics is sort of fracturing both on the left and on the right, the Lib Dems have failed to make a point of what is their only real kind of policy, which is to rejoin the European Union. Obviously, I don't agree with them, but at the end of the day, if you've got that point, then at least stand by it, stand over it, stick by it, and actually try and attract some people who might agree with you. But instead, what you get is Ed Davey hurling himself into, you know, lakes and dropping out parachute jumps and all the rest of it, and just being a complete and utter idiot. And now, I'm delighted to say Cristo Foufas is here. Cristo, how nice to see you.
Hello, nice to see you too. I don't think I've broadcast with you for a while.
No, I was going to say, I can't remember the last time. It was probably back in the old days of talk, wasn't it?
For legal reasons, we have to sit 1 metre apart,
That's
don't
true.
we?
Yeah,
that
the lawyers have insisted on that.
Yeah, they have, for both. But I think we're both pests with each other, which is ironic.
It's true. Yeah, there's no victim here.
Yeah, there is.
It's a mutually beneficial scenario. Listen, we've got lots to talk about.
Yes.
Let's kick it off with, I don't really like talking about the Oscars, but I'm going to mention it once and once only, because Javier Bardem's all over the place. They're all wearing these pins saying, you know, stop the war in Iran, ceasefire now, you know, and they just can't help themselves. You know, just go and have a bloody good night out, put a dress on, or, you know, some other clothes if that's what you fancy, and stop trying to tell us what to think about politics.
Do you know, if I won an Oscar, I am telling you now, I would be foaming at the mouth. I would be thanking my parents. I would be thanking everyone that had ever helped me. And I wouldn't be, I don't understand this whole, oh my God, I've won an Oscar. Racism.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I've won an Oscar. Genocide.
Yeah.
It's like, well, no, I don't know if anyone's watching for that reason. And it used to be a stunt. Do you remember when Marlon Brando did it? And you were like, oh God, that's unbelievable. But now everyone is just trying to out-virtue each other. And that's why it's so annoying.
Also, you know that it's so completely and utterly sort of insincere. It doesn't mean anything.
Well, also, the goodie bag involves a holiday, I think, to somewhere basically a skiing holiday, a villa holiday, I think a holiday in Cuba, something like that. So, I'm sure that'll fit in with net zero.
Oh, yeah, great.
You know, amazing.
Yeah.
And the goodie bags are $250,000.
That's ridiculous, isn't
Which is very, very relatable.
And as Ralph Schoellhammer just said, you know, these people, it's all very well to not like some of the things that your government is doing, and in this case, I hate everything this government's doing.
Yes.
But at the same time, you have to remember who the other guys are. And if you're going to go into a sort of an Oscar ceremony, effectively asking for a war to stop against a country like Iran, who go around murdering their own citizens and who have run the biggest terror network in the world for the best part of the last 50 years, but you want them to win, you're kind of going, you sort of got the wrong end of the stick here.
My view on this is that there's two sides. There's the celebrity side of it, and I think that celebrities if they're asked, they can give an opinion.
Yeah.
But wait till you're asked.
Yes.
I used to do a lot of junkets. You know what junkets are, don't you? Where you go and interview
I remember those
celebs.
days, yeah.
And you know, for film premieres and things like that. And I used to really enjoy asking them about the news. But I asked. I don't want you to volunteer it as an awards show. I don't want you just to tell me until I ask you your opinion on it. But when it comes to Iran, like, there are loads of stuff about this Iran war that isn't ideal. We probably wouldn't have picked this time. It's fair to ask the questions about what is the end game, you know, what is the strategy, all of those sorts of questions. But at the end of the day, we are where we are.
As long as you don't ask Keir Starmer, because he doesn't know what the strategy is.
This has been his worst ever, because he's had to have an opinion on something. Right. And this is the first time.
I said, Emma Wolf was in earlier, I said to her, he's now gone from making U-turns to just not doing anything. Yeah. Because he's so frightened of having to make a U-turn, he just now doesn't want to do anything.
Doesn't want to upset anyone. No. The thing is, we are where we are. If we have to pick a side, well, then we have to pick America. And the thing is, he's so dumb, because he could have actually played this really diplomatically in a very smart way. Because what he could have just done was say, right, have the bases, do that. He could have argued to the British public, we're just giving support, we're not getting involved. But to America, well, we are actually helping you. And then also all of those questions about strategy and long-term goal, you've got a seat at the table with Trump. Trump is not going to listen to you if you're not helping him. But at least you get a chance. Think about Thatcher. Right, Thatcher was not getting help from Reagan. Reagan himself actually was okay, I think, but the machinery of government around Reagan did not want to help Thatcher. No. But she played it very, very smart. She didn't publicly slag off Reagan. She kept in contact with him. And I think if this was her today, what she would have done would have been given the bases to Reagan, if this was Reagan doing this, but then privately and publicly she would have been supported, but privately she would have handbagged him into oblivion.
But we both know, Cristo, why Starmer said he didn't want to be involved and why he kept repeating it ad nauseum. You know, we were not involved in the original strikes, because he wanted to placate the Muslim population of Great Britain. It's got nothing to do with the people of Iran, nothing to do with the safety of the Middle East, everything to do with his voting base, which he needs to protect.
I think also he's got an issue that he is absolutely now, and this goes back 18 months, obsessed with his backbenchers. He rules not for Britain, but for his backbenchers. We saw the budget that Rachel Reeves did, the big budget where, you know, she lifted the two-child benefit cap after having suspended Labour MPs who argued in favour of lifting the two-child benefit cap, yet they tried to gaslight us into telling us that this had been a plan of theirs all along. That was not a budget for Great Britain. That was a budget for the backbenchers of the Labour Party, and that's what he's always thinking about now. So he's ruled by them rather than him ruling them, which is the way in which a strong Prime Minister with a massive majority should be. So we've got the most perverse situation in this country at the moment, where we have a government with a massive majority, which should be being able to be decisive and keep that majority in line. But weirdly, that massive majority is in charge of the Prime Minister.
Well,
it's
Dan
weird.
Hodges wrote a brilliant piece yesterday in the Mail on Sunday, in which he kind of set out why he believes this Prime Minister to be the worst liar of all Prime Ministers. And this is a guy who started out, used to come on my show all the time, supporting Keir Starmer, and I kind of groomed him into understanding that this guy is not what he says he is. He's not all about transparency. He's not all about responsibility. He's not all about cleaning up government. He's actually all of the complete reverse to that. You know, the Lord Ali stuff started coming on in the first month he was there. He started to become an authoritarian, cracking down on people like Lucy Connolly, locking people up for things that they said on Twitter and Facebook. And Dan Hodges actually said this. A couple of months ago, his senior number 10A told me to reflect on calling Keir Starmer a liar. I've reflected, he's the worst prime ministerial liar of my adult lifetime. And he goes through in his piece all about the people who have gone. You know, the Chief of Staff, the Morgan McSweeneys who have gone, Lord Doyle who's gone. Everyone's gone who was involved in the Mandelson affair, apart from him.
Yeah, and also there was a massive disconnect. I think, you know, my mother always told me that, you know, she's a wonderful woman and, you know, tough as old boots, but she always said to be a good liar, you've got to have a good memory.
Yes.
But if you tell the truth, you don't, because you could just telling the truth. Yeah. And did you notice, and this has sort of been buried a bit, but did you notice that when the Mandelson papers came out a few days ago, it was revealed that he said he hadn't interviewed.
Yes.
Right. well, hang on, what about this speech where he said he lied to me and I believed him?
Yes.
Well, how could someone have lied to you that you didn't interview?
Right.
So it's happening in plain sight.
Exactly.
And is he forgetting what he's told us previously, or is he so just is he such a gaslighter that he thinks that we just won't notice, or he doesn't care? I don't know.
Well, I wonder about that, because I've asked this question many times, because I used to do it all the time. I mean, I used to get pelters from Downing Street who used to complain to my bosses at Talk, why does Mike Graham keep calling Keir Starmer a liar? Because he is one.
Yeah,
you know,
because
because he keeps lying every single day. And his whole kind of construct around his kind of childhood, you know, and on the one hand his mother was great, always looking after the family. The next minute she was always ill and she wasn't able to look after the family. Then they were really poor, and then his dad was a tool maker. His dad turns out not to have been poor. Then they bought a field, then there was some donkeys. And you kind of go,
and wasn't there some inheritance tax write-off sort of weird thing?
And he somehow, you know, sort of comprised a way of selling the field on without paying any inheritance tax.
The donkeys,
it's very weird.
The donkeys would have been good practice for the cabinet, I suppose.
Well, it would have been. But this is not what I mean. It's like almost everything he says turns out not to be true.
And my word, didn't Rishi turn out to be right?
Yeah.
When Rishi said he will absolutely put your taxes up, he do not believe a word he says, absolutely spot on, correct. And I don't think we've ever had this before. And do you know what? I was given some really good advice in broadcasting years and years ago, and it wasn't give up before you say it. It was that just in case, just getting in.
That was not what I was going to say.
Oh, good, all right. But this is so true that they might hate you for your opinion, the audience is, but they'll hate you even more for not having one.
Yes.
And that is, he has no opinion on anything.
Well, there was another piece at the weekend in the Sunday Times about how he literally is a cipher, and all he can do is kind of read documents.
Yeah.
But he doesn't know what to do about having read those documents, what he should then think.
Because he's a lawyer, not a leader.
Yeah. But you see, I have this issue with people as well. I know loads of lawyers, right? I've had lots of friendships with lawyers over time, and many of the lawyers
that I've spent a lot of time with lawyers.
Well, I have
for your career.
Yeah, I mean, perhaps more than I should have done, and also divorce lawyers.
Yeah.
But the thing is that most lawyers that I know, particularly people who practice in court, as barristers, are pretty funny, very clever, very sort of nimble speakers, right? He's none of those things. I can't, and people have said to me that when he was running the CPS, he very rarely actually appeared in court. He was sort of administrator. He would hire other barristers to do the dirty work in the courtroom. Because I can't imagine him convincing a judge or a jury of anything.
Yeah, because you have to have an air of charisma. Because essentially, if you're a lawyer, there's a little bit of showbiz involved. You're a bit of an actor.
Of course,
you've got to lay it on a little bit thick. And do you remember the other story that turned out to be absolute nonsense, which was the one where he wrote the foreword in the book, which was for The Shamed Lawyer, where they'd gone after and tried to prosecute the British veteran.
Oh, yes.
And
that's
as
right.
it turned out...
Shine, the guy Shine, right?
And he completely didn't tell the truth on that. Downing Street didn't tell the truth on that. And this actually goes to the heart of what's happening with Iran. Because if you consider that he was swayed, he's so obsessed with international law and doing all things right and all of this stuff. And again, so they said, well, the only way that this could be lawful when it comes to supporting America is if it becomes defensive. So therefore, if Iran attacks us first.
Right.
Well, firstly, what leader wants to be attacked first? But secondly, that's exactly what Iran did. Iran then said they didn't wait for Britain to be involved to go for Cyprus.
No, they'd already attacked Cyprus.
Yeah, no, but before Cyprus this was, we'd been asked for help, and the cabinet, Miliband and Reeves advised him, no, you can't do this until it becomes defensive.
Yes.
Then it's lawful. So we've ended up getting involved.
Right.
We ended up giving the bases. We ended up sending this warship to Cyprus, which I think is about to arrive a week later.
Right.
But actually, what we've done is we've waited until they'd attacked us first. So it's lawful because he's so obsessed with all of that.
Exactly, and it's completely and utterly mad and completely and utterly sort of inadequate. Because in any situation, if you're in a pub or you're walking down the street and you see somebody walking towards you and you go, well, I don't know if they're going to hit me. I'll just wait until they hit me, and then I'll do something about it. That's not what you do, is it?
It's true. If you saw someone coming towards you with a knife, you wouldn't go, well, actually, I think I'm going to have to wait until I'm defended. So when the knife is in my throat, that's when when I'll think about trying to like disarm
Right,
them.
or maybe call the police or something afterwards. Meanwhile, let's talk to our next guest. Ralph Schoellhammer is here, of course. Ralph, very good morning to you.
Hi, Mike. Sorry, I'm abroad, so I hope the internet connection is not going to give out, but I'll give my best.
Well,
Fingers
you see,
crossed.
when you say you're abroad, as far as I'm concerned, you're always abroad because you're not here. So where are you?
I'm currently in Rome.
In Rome. Oh, very nice. When in Rome, as they say, do as the Romans would do. It's a lovely city, Rome, isn't it? How is it? Do you go there a lot, and have you noticed it changing over the course of time?
Oh, I mean, I've been there the last time in 1990, so no, this is a completely different experience. And traveling to European cities these days is always an interesting experience if you compare it with the countryside. And I'm sure it will come up on your show today, right? We just saw Marine Le Pen's huge success in regional elections in France, with the exception of Paris, where apparently a socialist candidate is leading. I mean, this rural-urban divide, this is something that David Betts is also talking a lot about. I mean, this is going to be another wrinkle about the growing civil unrest and the issues that we're going to have in the Western world.
Yeah, absolutely right. I mean, funnily enough, Pooch and I were just discussing it this morning because there's been a new graph has come out which shows the amount of immigration, particularly from non-EU countries, since 2020, since Boris Johnson came in, and they call it here the Boris wave, because when he got elected in 2019, one of the things he promised to do was stop Brexit, basically make Brexit happen, basically, and reduce immigration to a net figure of 20,000, right? But what he's managed to do, according to this graph, and there it is there, if you see the red number, that's the EU immigration, which actually went down after Brexit in 2019, but the non-EU absolutely ballooned, went up from, a 0.3 all the way up to 0.10 pretty much, and then we're still suffering because more people in this country than ever believe this kind of nonsensical socialist dream that without immigration we can't have an economy.
I mean, future historians will marvel over the entire Brexit saga as the clearest case study for an elite openly conspiring against the will of the people. And I say openly conspiring because what you just showed, Mike, I mean, the numbers are all there. This is not, oh my God, this is happening in the background. This is a secret. No, it was the open collusion of pretty much the entire political establishment from, the quote unquote lukewarm conservatives to the left that said, yeah, we saw the result of the referendum, but we're just moving ahead and ignore it. I mean, even in the environmental issue, which was for a long time my main bread and butter, is they went ahead and had more insane regulations and rules, keyword is always to hear Ed Miliband, than the European Union. So you out-European Unionized the European Union that you supposedly left, but you never really did.
Yeah, I know. It's absolutely extraordinary, isn't it? And I mean, that's the other problem with the way that Western Europe is currently kind of dealing with all of this. As you say, there's clearly a massive wave of anti-immigration feeling. People have had enough. They've seen the results and they're not good. And they, as you say, mostly will live in kind of the working class areas or the more rural areas of the countries. Many of the immigrants and those who like immigration live in the cities. And you suddenly have a two-tier country.
Yeah, you do. And I mean, the thing is, I'm sometimes not entirely sure. I mean, I guess this would be a case of suicidal empathy, whether everybody in the cities really likes mass migration. I sometimes wonder. So one part, of course, are the areas. I think London is only 30% white at the moment. I don't want to use wrong numbers, but it's thereabouts. You actually have to look for there's Chinatown in San Francisco. Now you probably have to look for English Town in London. It's just, another mosaic piece and a multicultural dream. But I very often wonder whether the people who like it, do they live in the high migration areas or do they live in the low migration areas? And they have their kids, in fancy private schools. Well, yes, you're going to have the son of the ambassador from Nigeria or whatnot, but you're not really going to be exposed to the downsides of mass migration. But I think the key point is another one, which is that migration at some point becomes existential. I mean, as an Austrian/German, I can tell you, countries can survive a lot, including 2 lost world wars. But as long as the country is recognizable, the culture and the people, you can recover. But what we are seeing in so many parts of the West, including the UK, is that basically the people are disappearing. And this is what I'm and you are and your viewers are worried about. It is And I'm not being hyperbolic here. It truly is existential. And as I always say, right, that does not mean zero migration. You can have the occasional drop if you want, the occasional influx. That's just part of nature. This is how it's always gone on. But you want the country to remain recognizably English or recognizably Austrian or recognizably German. And this is what we're losing. And this is, I think, what many people, including myself, are worried about.
Sure. And a lot of people are now starting to talk here about something which they have kind of avoided talking about, which is the falling birth rate. And the fact that, it's not just the fact that perhaps the white people in Britain are not having as many babies as they used to, but that the people who are coming in from other countries are having far more, so that the ratio is changing literally by the day.
The birth rate, I think, and even in European countries to try to do a lot, I think we are tackling this the wrong way. You want to create the conditions, and we can discuss how the state can positively influence this, where you get as close as possible to a single person. Ideally, yes, I'm saying it. I hope your female viewers are not going to kill me for this. Ideally, the male, right? That you can support the family. Wife, 2 children, maybe 3 children, ideally, on a single income. Now, in order to reach this, and this is very important, it's not just an economic issue; it's a meaning issue. And what I'm trying to say is that you need to give people a sense of purpose. And for a man, and of course a woman as well, right? I think having a family is purpose, but you want to create the conditions where you are supporting the family. You don't want to be a permanent, receiving handouts from the states. No, you want to have the impression that you actually can provide for your family. Now, how could the state influence this positively? Tax cuts, building housing, creating the conditions where innovative people can found companies, a pro-entrepreneurial stance on the one side, but of course also a pro-industry stance on the other. So I think we could create a whole package of this. The problem on the right is very often that in economic issues, they're either libertarian or they're socialist. But there is a middle ground, which I call industrialist, meaning that you want to be libertarian in the entrepreneurial sense, but you want to be quote unquote socialist in the sense that you say, listen, John Smith of London, you have a wonderful idea, we support you, but you're going to produce your wonderful idea in a factory in the UK and not in China. And I think we need to think the economy in completely new terms.
Yes, I think that's absolutely right, because at the end of the day, you cannot continue on the same trajectory and expect something else to happen. And the trajectory is the same. I mean, there was another story at the weekend, I'm just looking for it here, but I haven't found it, which said that the numbers of immigrants seeking British citizenship has increased by quite a large number, I think 50 or 60,000 compared to before Labour were in. So since Labour have got into July of 2024, many more of the people coming here from overseas are seeking British citizenship and getting it.
Yeah, but they're not seeking it for what I would say the right reasons. I mean, I don't begrudge anybody who wants to have it. I mean, it's a great honor, it's a privilege, but that's the very point, right? British citizenship is supposed to be more than a piece of paper, and this is again what many on the libertarian right or the multicultural left are not understanding. That if you say, "Oh, being British is just a bureaucratic administrative act," well, then you already lost your country. But this is like me trying to join the Graham family, and you give me a piece of paper that says, "And now you are Ralph Graham." But we both know that this is not how it works, right? This is a gradual process where over time, over generations, you then integrate step one and then assimilate into a new culture. But of course, you're also right. It is not enough to complain about migration and at the same point, don't do anything about the birth rate. But of course, those two things are connected because you only want to birth children into a society that you feel is worthwhile preserving. And we have good polls on this. There's a growing number of people who simply says, I believe the society I live in, or the UK, Germany, Austria, you name it, is no longer something worth preserving. And I think these things are all interconnected. We cannot look at them in a kind of compartmentalized way.
No, and interestingly enough, there's a story in the Telegraph this morning around about the sort of closer alignment to the European Union that Keir Starmer's government now wants to do. And he's talking about giving students from the EU cheaper university tuition fees in order to encourage them to come here. And of course, this was what caused part of the problem in the first place, because the massive number of students who came to this country under Boris Johnson's plan brought loads of members of their family with them. So they came into the UK on a student visa, sometimes not really intending at all to be students, bringing with them, sometimes a wife, some kids, maybe some parents. They were allowed to bring, I think, up to 5 or 6 dependents with them. And then, of course, they overstayed the visa and they're all still here.
Yeah, and in general, I think this tendency or this from my perspective, not sensible wish that as many people as possible should go to universities. I think it's just absurd. The universities have always been, and again, I beg your forgiveness, but they have always been elite institutions. And I have to admit, to some extent, that was fine. But you want to have a university system where a very smart person from a working class background, here we go, can still get in. And this is important. It should be merit-based, but it should not be quantity-based. You say, oh my God, if we have 10% of people under 20 in the universities, that's awesome. Is it? I mean, by what metric? I think, as I said, people need to find meaning in life, and the best way to find meaning is to do something that you're good at. Some people will be good at university. Some people will be good at shingling a roof. Some people will be good running the Irish pub down the street, or the English pub, if you forgive me. Right? And I think, and there's nothing wrong with this. This absurd idea that if you don't have an MA, PhD, BA behind your name, you're worth less than somebody else. This is a perversion. I mean, people, the value, if you want value, or the dignity of people comes if they can lead meaningful lives, and this can come from all kinds of areas.
Of course, and people are now beginning to realise that, and I think parents are beginning to realise it, kids are beginning to realise it. You know, one of my sons, my youngest actually, didn't want to go to university, so he's gone out into the jobs market and he's got himself a job. He said, I just don't fancy being with a load of woke people who are going to tell me, you know, what I should say and what I shouldn't say, what I should believe and what I shouldn't believe, and come out with a big debt of about 50,000 quid, which I'll never pay back, and I'll get no job that's worth more than I'm getting now.
No, absolutely. And in some way, mass university has also led to mass moronization. Because the point has always been that at the university, you can think a little bit outside the box, which is fine. You can have a discussion whether men and women actually exist. Okay, you know, in a philosophy department, sure, why not? But the idea now that everybody runs through this, you know, ideological marinating process, and then they come out at the end being less smart than they were before, I think this is partially true. And I would also add, the most absurd radical ideas in 8 out of 10 cases always emanate from the universities. If only people with university degrees would be allowed to vote, most of the West would be under a green communist government. I mean, this is the simple reality. So it's in a sense the working class that is the last bastion of sanity, or the non-university educated are the last bastion of sanity.
Yeah, absolutely right. And in terms of the way that the sort of the war's going at the moment, I know you've been writing a bit about it on your Twitter page. You know, is it the Trump market plan versus the state plan? That's kind of an interesting conversation to have. You know, Britain can't seem to decide what to do. You know, on the one hand, we're being asked by Donald Trump to go and support the ships in the Straits of Hormuz, reopen it. But of course, we don't have any ships. So he's pretending that he's being a strong man by saying, oh, no, we're not going to help you because we don't think that's a good idea. No, we haven't got any ships. Meanwhile, the price of oil and gas goes through the roof. Meanwhile, in America now, the Hollywood stars are all out last night with their little pins saying, stop the war in Iran, you know, because it's not right. Where's it all going? Where do you think it's going?
Well, just as a quick add-on, I think in ancient Rome, there was the saying that an actor is just slightly above a prostitute in social standing. And I mean no insult. I mean no insult to prostitutes. So what Javier Bardem or somebody else has to say about politics, I never understood why we should care about this in the first place.
Yeah.
I really don't. I don't give, you know, insert your favorite word here. No, but about the war, there's only one thing I would say. This is Donald Trump's biggest gamble in his entire life. Yeah. And I believe it's still the only way forward is through. There will be, in my estimation, or the likelihood of a taco, right? The famous Trump always chickens out. I don't think this is going to happen. And I made the argument on my Twitter feed, and I stand by it, which is this is going to be a decisive moment, whether or not the, you know, quote unquote markets are calling the shots, or whether in this case the United States, the state or politics is calling the shots. And this will be interesting to observe. But I will add one more thing. Whatever you think about the United States and Donald Trump, losing, however then we define losing, this war is not beneficial for Europe or the UK either. I just want to remind the people in the United Kingdom, the reason why we have this conversation is in English is because of the British Empire. There are benefits to being, you know, the global superpower and the global hegemon, and we sometimes forget this. I think it is very nice when I fly anywhere in the world that there is signage in English which I can read. I don't want to learn Chinese or Russian or, you know, or whatever language you think about. So this idea, if the United States just disappear and it's going to be a world where the Chinese are number one, how's that going to affect me? This is going to affect you tremendously. And as I said, I want my side to win, even if I not always agree with how my side is acting. At the end of the day, I want my side to win.
Yeah.
And I think there's nothing wrong with that.
Well, this is where you see the ludicrous nature yesterday of the El Quds march, which the police basically banned, but then they kind of had a non-moving sort of meeting, if you like, where they were all chanting death to Israel, death to America, death to the IDF. And you just think, our streets have become infested with these individuals, and as you say, who are not on our side. They want the other side to win. They want to support a ghastly, horrible, bloodthirsty Iranian regime that kills its own people, rather than side with Donald Trump and the United States of America. I find it absolutely staggering.
No, and what I always miss, and it's the same in Continental Europe, is a certain amount of gratitude. I would never ever think about, walking out in the street when I'm in London waving an Austrian flag, because it would be disrespectful.
Right.
Unless there's maybe a soccer game, a football game, England versus Austria. So there might be some exceptions to this rule.
Right.
But I would never do it in a political sense.
Right.
And this is just, it's you don't do this. It's like me, coming into a living room and starting to rearrange the furniture.
Right.
You're still as a guest, behave like a guest, and there's nothing wrong with it. We are in the eyes of God, we might all be equal, but within a country, we are not. There are citizens, both on an administrative and an emotional level, and then there are people who are not, or people who abuse their citizenship. So I think we should have conversations about revoking citizenship. As I said, it's not just a piece of paper.
No.
Or it's not supposed to be just a piece of paper.
And it's not just something that you can come and ask for and be given.
Yes.
You have to earn it, as far as I'm concerned. I think, if you were born here and you're British, that's great. People should be very proud of that, and they should be very happy that they're British. But equally, if you're going to another country, you can't just demand to be made a citizen. That doesn't make any sense for the country or for the people coming in. There has to be some kind of test, surely, to God.
I mean, try it in the United Arab Emirates.
Nope.
Who's on the phone?
Cristo coming in.
Yeah, that's Cristo.
Is it my mom? It just
no, it's Cristo. No, it's not. No.
She always calls on the most inappropriate times.
Well, people do, unfortunately. That's the thing. But yeah, it's just a kind of a mad world at the moment, and I think a lot of people are quite discombobulated by it because they can't work out what's going to happen. They're seeing all this stuff spinning around. They see the price of oil going up, the price of petrol going up. It feels kind of out of control.
I mean, there is a potentially. I mean, I try to be a little bit the optimist here, right? But I think there's a potential good thing here as well, which is that, and I say this very carefully, and I don't want you to misunderstand me, but to a certain extent, right? When people are not sure if they're dreaming, they say, "Can you pinch me?" And I think what we are currently experiencing is this pinch a little bit. So there is a reassertion in many areas of reality, and I think that is a good thing. We are having conversations now, Mike, that we could not have had 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 years ago.
Yes.
We can only talk about nationalism, patriotism, the importance of social cohesion. Like, you could not have these conversations 5, 10 years ago, because they're, of course, also politically and geopolitically relevant. You cannot be a global player if you don't know who you are. And we are finally having a conversation about who are we? And of course, also, who are the other guys? And that is a good thing. I don't want the pain to be overwhelming, but I think a realization that there is more to life than GDP numbers and just kind of dry numbers that no longer tell you anything. Right. I think that's a good thing. We can think outside the box again. And the question now is, do we have the right outside of the box thinkers? And this is, of course, again, what I see a certain, what can I say, lack of qualified individuals everywhere. Yes. Everywhere. Yeah. Again, I'm not just, this is not within the current elite, but also within the forming, let's call it counter elite. I think there's still a lot of work to be done.
Well, there is, because I think the education conversation actually is part of that, because the reason why universities have become such a big part of the economy is because Tony Blair decided it would be a great idea to send more kids to universities, have the universities make more money, build an economic model as opposed to a sort of an intellectual one, and make it all about money. And now, because fewer people are coming, fewer people can afford to go, immigration has meant that the immigration rules has meant that fewer foreign students are coming. So now they're all panicking and they're all going, "Oh, we better go to China and get them to give us some money."
And here's the thing, and I'm almost going to sound like a 1960s hippie, but at the end of the day, what is the point of money, right? The point of money is that it can afford you a life that you enjoy, a life that you like.
Yes.
So what's the point if your income is, let's say, I don't know, 200 pounds higher a month, but you no longer recognize the city, the village, the area around you, and it makes you feel uncomfortable. Because as I said, at the end of the day, like the point of having an income is to have a meaningful, maybe content or fulfilling life. But that kind of money is the means to the end, but it's not the end in itself.
No.
Which is I always say, there is no point in government handouts. If you feel like you're losing your country and then the government says, oh, here's an extra quid every month, that's not really going to address your problem, right? And I think this is, again, what politics doesn't see. And the problem is that it's not just having an income. It's having an income as the result of doing something meaningful with your life.
Yes.
And this is where the state has to create the conditions that people can have a meaningful life. So I always say the reason why I'm pro-industry, pro-manufacturing, pro-nuclear power, pro-coal is not so much because it has a positive impact on the economy. It has a positive impact on human life. You get up in the morning, you get dressed, you go to work. And I promise you, if this is happening, you will have more family formation, because then you have structure, then you have meaning. The idea, like, there is a sense, I don't want to sound like Andrew Tate, but the government wants to put us in a quote-unquote matrix where you sit at home all day, receive a monthly government handout, and that's it. That's not life. That's not going to make you find a partner and create a family. Not at all. So this is where we have to go. And I hope that, as I said, even with reform and restore and advance, and there are so many parties in Britain, it's very hard to keep up with it. These are things, in my opinion, they don't address enough. Because even if you get rid of migration or change the migration structure, there is more to that. Right? So we want to get rid of the quote unquote replacement ideologies like Islam in all its ways, shapes, and forms. But then if you create the new vacuum, what do you fill the vacuum with? And I think this is something we don't have an answer to yet.
Yes.
I mean, I do, you do, but politics doesn't.
But politics doesn't, because they think that they're giving people money and they're helping them, when in fact the money has to come from the other people who don't need the help, who are making the money in the first place to give to the government so that they can hand it over to the people that don't make anything. And it's all about growth. At the end of the day, if you don't have a job which generates money, then the money runs out, because what else are you going to do?
No, and this is, by the way, Mike, and this is the great chance that we have at the moment. If we use the current technological advances in the right way, what you then hopefully can accomplish is that, in fact, right, everybody says we're going to lose work, but you could make the other argument, which is that if things get cheaper because we get more productive, that you can have an even more fulfilled life, even if you have a job that is not super mega productive, whatever it is. But as I said, I think, and this is particularly true for men, probably more than for women, you need a reason to get up out of bed in the morning. If you take this away, right, I mean, you get the lethargic, non-moving, self-retreating class that is a much, much bigger problem. You get a milieu in which it becomes acceptable. And we see this started, you mentioned, under Tony Blair. Well, I don't have the numbers right now with me, but where you had a growing part of the male British population never put in a single day's work. And because they were on disability leave, and there was like this expansion of what it means to be disabled and all these kind of things. I mean, Britain has been a country, Germany as well. For goodness sake, we fought world wars. I mean, I'm not wishing that back, don't get me wrong. But if you look at what people went through and still, kind of were functional human beings, I think, we did get weak in a certain respect. So there is no reason to say because I had a bad weekend, I can no longer go to work on Monday. I mean, there were people that came back from the front.
Yes.
They have seen and experienced horrible things.
Exactly.
And they went back to work. I mean, what a beautiful generation. Right. It was the greatest generation. But to talk about the greatest generation appears as if it's something we can never aspire to again. Of course we can, and we should. Sorry, this was a much longer monologue than I intended.
Ralph, good to see you, as ever. Now, I can't let you go. I mean, since you're in Rome, obviously you'll be going back to Austria, so you must have a message for the people of Austria that you're going to be back, right?
I'll be back in Vienna very soon, and hopefully I'll be back in London very soon, and then we can make an entire hour, Mike.
Oh, that'd be great. That'd be brilliant. Well, people love you today, and I love you every time you're on. So you keep coming up with that common sense, and keep an eye on those Italians in Rome. Thank you very much indeed. Ralph Schoellhammer.
Thanks, Mike. Take care.
Thank you very much. Good to see you. Cristo Foufas is in the house. Cristo, very nice to see you. Hello. He managed to find his way in. It's not easy to find this place, and we don't reveal where it is. Craziness, right? I'll tell you what, actually, Bish, because we love you so much, we're going to make you the official bishop of the Mike Graham Show. So you can forget about Sky and the BBC and all those other tossers, right? But also a lot of people asking, can you read out? I know the letter's quite long, but would you mind reading it out for us? Because a lot of people want to hear what you actually said to the King.
I will certainly do that. You sure you got about 45 minutes to spare?
Yeah, we got plenty of time for decent people. Go on, off you go.
Right. I'll read you what I said. I'll cut out all the preamble. My letter reads, Your Majesty, I write to you neither as a politician nor as a commentator, but as one of your loyal subjects who, as a bishop of Christ's Church, cannot remain silent while the Christian foundations of this kingdom are steadily dismantled. Sir, there are moments in the life of a nation when silence becomes a form of betrayal. If I refuse to speak to your Majesty now, this would be such a moment. For more than 1,000 years, the crown of this realm has stood in solemn covenant with the Christian faith. The laws of this land were shaped by it. The liberties of our people were nurtured by it. The conscience of our civilization was formed by it. From the abbeys of medieval England to the parish churches of our villages, from the preaching of the reformers to the missionary zeal that carried the gospel to the ends of the earth, the Christian faith has not merely influenced Britain, it has defined her. Yet today, that inheritance is being quietly but deliberately eroded. Across the institutions of this nation, there is a growing hostility towards the faith that built them. Christian belief is mocked in the public square. Christian morality is dismissed as intolerance. Christian institutions are pressured to surrender doctrine in order to conform to the ideology of the age. Within the very church that bears the name of England, voices have arisen that appear more eager to mirror the spirit of the age than to proclaim the eternal truth of the gospel. Meanwhile, beyond the walls of our churches, powerful political movements openly speak of removing Christianity from its historic place within the life of this nation. What would once have been whispered is now proclaimed openly, that Britain must become a post-Christian state. It is in this context that I write to you, Your Majesty, for the British Crown does not stand apart from the crisis. The sovereign of this realm bears a title that is not merely historic but sacred in its origin and meaning, defender of the faith. Those words are not decorative, they are a charge. They speak of a monarch whose duty is to not merely preside over the ceremonies of the church, but to stand as a guardian of the Christian inheritance of the nation. Yet many among your subjects now ask with increasing anxiety, who will defend that inheritance today? They see a nation drifting from its foundations and they ask whether the crown will remain silent while that inheritance is dismantled. Your Majesty, may I be so bold as to observe that your coronation oath was not a poetic formality. It was a solemn vow made before Almighty God to maintain and preserve the Protestant Reformed religion established by law. Those words bind the conscience of the sovereign. They remind the crown that its authority is not merely constitutional but moral. The monarch is not merely a symbol of national continuity, but a custodian of the spiritual inheritance that shaped this realm. History records moments when kings and emperors were confronted by the church and reminded that their authority was accountable before God. In the 4th century, Ambrose of Milan stood before the Emperor Theodosius I and reminded him that even the ruler of an empire must bow before the moral law of Christ. That tradition of prophetic witness has never disappeared, nor should it. For when rulers forget the foundations upon which their authority rests, the church must speak, not with hostility, but with holy clarity. And so I write to say this, Your Majesty. The Christian character of this nation is under profound and accelerating assault. If the crown does not stand visibly and courageously in defense of that inheritance, history will record that the guardians of Britain's institutions watched in silence as the foundations were removed. The issue before us is not nostalgia, it is civilization. Remove Christianity from the story of Britain and you do not create a neutral society, you create a moral vacuum. And history teaches us that moral vacuums are never left empty for long. Your Majesty now stands at a crossroads that few monarchs in modern history have faced. For the erosion of Britain's Christian inheritance will not ultimately be judged by speeches made in Parliament or debates in the press. It will be judged by whether those entrusted with the guardianship of our ancient institutions chose to defend them, or merely preside over their quiet surrender. You may preside over the quiet dissolution of Britain's Christian identity, or you may rise to the ancient responsibility entrusted to the crown and speak with clarity about the faith that built this kingdom. The first path requires little courage. The second will require a great deal, but it is the path that history honours. Your Majesty's subjects are not asking for religious coercion. They are asking for leadership. They are asking that the sovereign who bears the title Defender of the Faith remember what that title means. They are asking that the Crown hear the growing cry of anguish from Christians across this land who feel that the spiritual inheritance of their nation is being surrendered without resistance, and they are asking whether the Crown will stand with them. For the faith that shaped Britain is not merely a cultural ornament. It is the wellspring from which our laws, our liberties, and our moral imagination have flowed. If it is cast aside, the nation will discover, too late, that it has severed itself from the very roots that sustained it. Your Majesty, to many the crown is a symbol of authority, but before God it is also a symbol of stewardship. And stewardship carries with it the duty to defend what has been entrusted. May Almighty God grant your Majesty the wisdom to discern this hour and the courage to fulfill the sacred duty entrusted to the crown.
Fantastic. Well played.
Yeah, Bish.
Brilliant. A lot of people going, can we get the Bish to do a weekly sermon, for us? Because, so few people are standing up for Christianity in the way that you are. You've got to let us know whether you get a reply, by the way, because obviously the worry is that the people around the king will go, oh my God, there's a bishop asking about Christianity.
They're not going to pop that in his red box today when he opens it in the morning. Gets Bish's letter
Don't show
there.
that,
I mean, but Bishop's
it's
right.
time for me to go. We'll see you tomorrow at 7 a.m.
Remember, despite all of the others out there, it's always the others. Don't be a plank.